So here we are, episode 2. I recently had the pleasure of sitting down with two people that I'm really proud to call my friends, A.H.A, industry head for decades, and legendary Australian skate photographer David Pang. We spoke about everything from the 70s, 80s, 90s, up to the present day, skateboarding, music, influences, mixtapes, and we did it all over a couple of slices of lemon meringue. So set yourself in because it's a long episode, and I will give you a little disclaimer. I was using $25 microphones from eBay at the time. My voice resonates a lot more than anybody else's, so it seems. So there's a little bit of echo. If you can put up with it, I think you will enjoy the content. Hopefully you do. It's a long one, so maybe grab a comfy chair and a cup of tea. All right, Dave Pang, A.H.A, thanks for coming on what will be episode 2 of the Sore Losers show. So, Pangy, first of all, Canberra, come all this way, especially to be on the show. I know that's the only reason you're here.
100%.
And A.H.A, you've come all the way from
overseas.
Overseas, yeah. You literally travelled over a body of ocean.
Yes.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for having us.
First thing I just wanted to get straight into is a question for both of you. How did you guys meet? How did you guys become friends and tight? Was that a long time ago, or has it been more recent years that you guys got closer? Or
I think probably I've always been aware of Dave through his photography in magazines and just talking to people over the years. But I guess we first really connected it was 2008. I was working with Goliath, and we had the Toy Machine team out here, and we travelled down to Canberra on that trip, and Dave came out and saw Ed and all the team with a bunch of photos that he'd taken way back in the 90s of when they first toured down here.
Okay, yeah.
And then I sort of connected through Goliath, Pete Franklin down at Goliath there. Sort of knew Dave fairly well, and then just more recently we've sort of kept in touch and worked on a few little projects together, and
Yeah, I think it's when you meet someone that's as passionate about skateboarding and music and other sorts of things, you just keep that relationship going, and it's very easy to keep in touch with each other.
I think it's amazing to me that skateboarding just brings people together like nothing else I've ever experienced. Different backgrounds, different everything. But when you have that, just the love for skateboarding and loving the activity, not only the activity side of things, because a lot of people consider skateboarding just to be, it's an activity, right? Whether you want to consider it a sport or not. But for me, it was always so much more than that. It was like daily life. It came into my daily life in so many, it changes the way you look at the world, basically. Like if you're walking up the street, for example, and you see an interesting bit of concrete.
yes,
and you take a photo of it.
Yep.
It's insanity behavior, but it's for a reason. And I think that just passion for it brings people together so easily, and people gel so easily, just on that one common ground, that it doesn't matter what else you're into, but the likelihood of finding more common ground is higher, I think, if you share that passion.
Yeah. I think it's one of the few things where it's either a great filter or a great anti-filter, in that it doesn't matter your political persuasion, the colour of your skin, the music you listen to, what you eat, even what language you speak or can't speak. If the only thing you've got in common with the other person is skateboarding, you tend to get along with them, or you can communicate with them and integrate with them really easily.
There's that base there where you can sort of appreciate where each other come from, and then you can explore, like, a lot of skaters aren't into the same skaters or the same music, but that tie back to skateboarding is the sort of the common denominator, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes it so great, and I think that's why it has it's ramping up as more of a socially acceptable lifestyle, basically, because I think people are just sort of more recent years starting to notice that it is community building, that there is a support network within skateboarding that you can't get from a lot of other places, you know, just because having that common ground, understanding, and there's so many creatives in skateboarding that, it often takes a creative person to understand another creative person.
I think creativity, resourcefulness, and like you mentioned, Damo, most people would just walk by a lump of concrete or some sort of architectural artifact, but skateboarders look at it with a different eye, and then, or they see something that's even not skatable, but then they'll have the resourcefulness to make it skatable as well.
Absolutely.
So, and that sense of community that we do embrace and welcome people we may not know, because there's that one common interest and similarity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think coming from a different era of skateboarding, back to when there were so few skateboarders. I know for myself growing up that if you spot somebody across the street, and if they had a pair of Vision Streetwear or Airwalk Vicks on, I'd go out of my way. Like, I'd cross the street to be like, hey man, like, do you skate? It was such a
haven't seen that before, but
I think it was the same when I went to high school. There was probably like 2 or 3 kids in the whole school that had a pair of Vans, and it was sort of like they're your people.
I think there was that drop off, because it definitely did peak, and it that peak 85 to 89, I want to say, were huge years for skating. There was a lot of touring going on for the first time, I think, in Australia, and you were very much a part of that.
It's in the right place at the right time. You're super fortunate.
You were. I remember picking up publications, so Skating Life magazine, Australian Skateboarder or Skateboarding,
Slam.
Yeah, Slam.
Wheels magazine.
Yeah. Speed Wheels. That's the one. But so I'd be flicking pages in there, and I used to take note of everything in there. I was captivated by the magazines because, videos were so few and far between that magazines were everything, At least you had something quarterly or monthly. Point being, I'd be like, oh, who took that photo? And David Pang. Oh, who took that photo? David Pang. And it seemed like you were probably the most published skateboard photographer consistently through that period of time.
I think again, I was in the right place at the right time, and I was very fortuitous that I was located in Canberra, so so some of my co-photographers, so Dave Mock and Scott Needham were Sydney based.
Yeah.
So by natural consequence of that, they were aligned with Skating Life and Speed Wheels. And Aaron Brown, John Mills, I think Aaron Brown, he was a little bit after me, but certainly John Mills was Queensland based, so he was more aligned with Slam due to that, and Dave Walsh was Melbourne based, and he was also the editor of 540 magazine.
That's right, 540.
So he was by association and by vocation or employment, was locked in with 540 magazine, where I had no industry in Canberra, and I was a free agent and could travel north and south, east and west, and so that gave me the flexibility of submitting images to everybody. And being Canberra based, I wasn't aligned to, like, I wasn't in the hardcore camp, I wasn't in the Bonza camp, I wasn't in the Koala camp, and I spoke to everybody, and I was able to submit photos to everybody. But like yourself, Damo, I would wait on tender hooks for Transworld, mainly Transworld. I was more of a Transworld follower than a Thrasher follower, because of the quality of the paper stock and the imagery, not because of the images themselves, but the way they were reproduced. But and even before then with Skateboarder magazine and Action Now, like I would look at James Casmius's photographs. Dave Dash was the editor of Skateboarder magazine, then Grant Britton, Todd Swank, and Spike Jones, and really analyse them and try and at least measure up to what those guys were doing and represent that with Australian photography.
I think I do find it amazing, because you brought up 540 magazine as well. So during that window of time, like the late 80s nudging into the 90s, so there was Speed Wheels, Skate and Life. Had Slam started yet?
Yeah, Slam had definitely started.
Skateboard Australia,
and 540 magazine. That's 5 publications in Australia, all operating at the same time, for an activity that didn't seem to, like, the general public weren't into it.
Yeah.
That's my memory of it.
But I think the kids that were into it, you'd buy pretty much all those mags. If you went to the newsagent and, you sort of went to the surfing section, there's always that little selection of skateboard mags. And
very true.
If you had a few bucks to spare burning a hole in your pocket, you'd buy one of those mags to take home.
And I think it is something about skateboarding that maybe it's one of those activities where the participants get right into the culture and the process. So you're either a skateboarder, which was quite a different culture, and I think more skateboarders would buy skateboard magazines than kids that play soccer and football would buy soccer and football magazines. And maybe because skateboarding is always evolving and progressing, there's always something new to be in the skateboard magazine. Whereas, man, once you've got one photo of Ronaldo kicking a goal or doing a bicycle kick.
I think the other thing too is because skateboarding at that time in particular was less accessible by mainstream media. That was really the only place where you could get the information and sort of absorb the culture was through the magazines, whereas football and cricket, you can watch it on TV.
I think it was
a newspaper, and you've got more access.
It was so rarely that there'd be anything on television to do with skateboarding, and if it was, it'd be like on Simon Townsend's Wonderworld, something like that, and it'd be a 2-minute thing.
I remember that 60 minutes thing, and everybody had that on videotape, and then there was a Wonderworld thing that was filmed at North Ride Skate, and everybody had that, and it just used to, these tapes would do the rounds. I mean, actually go over to sort of place to watch just this crappy.
It's sort of funny as well. Like, I sort of relate that to, and whether it's something with us as skateboarders, but it's not only skateboarding, but it's like the music that I was listening to at the time. Like, if I saw a video clip of Kiss or Devo, or the Jam, it'd be like, God, I've got to get a recording of this, or I want to play it back again, because like it'll be like, Sherbet and Aerosmith or Air Supply and those. It's like, oh my God, God.
Yeah.
I
What was
just
it?
can't
There
put up
was a
with it.
TV program on every afternoon, and they'd play like 3 or 4 video clips at 5:30, and I can't remember the name of it, but you'd sit there with your cassette recorder and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
waiting,
Yeah.
and then you record it.
I used to
And
do
you just
that
have-
with Triple J.
Yeah.
Just sit there at night because I slept. I hardly slept. Like as a teenager, I was always up drawing or like looking at magazines like skate mags, going through the mags. So I'd have the radio on next to me, play, record, and pause there. So if something came on, I'd just be like on the pause button, so it'd record it, and then wait for the next one. And be like, no. So I had like a huge music library that was made up of just radio, of everything played on the radio. And I think the same thing went for skateboard videos, because if you had a friend with a VCR and you had a VCR, you could put them together, and you know, like if one person's got a tape, then everybody's got that tape in the neighbourhood, you know.
But again, it's sort of funny. Like we talk about this, and whether some of the younger people, if they listen to this, they wouldn't know the pain of like you set up your cassette tape to record music, and you put if you're recording over a legit tape, so you put the tape over the holes, and you go to record, and the bit of the tape recorder goes through the sticky tape, so you miss the recording. You say, "Oh my God!" And I'm not saying like we're old hacks, but kids nowadays just wouldn't appreciate the pain.
Yes.
Or if you're like listening, okay, yeah, I know, like the Clash are in the like top 20, so I'll listen to the top 40 and I'll record it, and the DJ talks over the last part of the song or the beginning of it, and you're going, oh fuck, dude, you've just ruined my recording.
Or it fades in and fades out, like too early or too late, you know.
Like I've got the Clash, but I've got Bob Seger just playing over the back
crossfading.
As far as, because you do zines today, so what I was going to say is that with that period of like that, where there were a lot of publications in Australia, that late 80s period, and then I definitely noticed that around 1990, heaps of people started doing zines.
Yeah, that's around when I started.
And it seemed to coincide with the death of the skateboard magazine within Australia. I think the only one at the end that survived was Slam.
I think the way that all came about was, sort of 85 through to 88 was when you're sort of discovering and learning all about skateboarding. And, we used to get Thrasher and Transworld, and they'd have zine articles in there, you'd see Swank Zine and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, wow, this is kind of really cool, but it took a little bit of time before people actually had the confidence to put a little zine together. Because when it's like anything, when you put it out there, you're worried about how it's going to be received, and if there's going to be criticism, and once you print something, it's in print, and that's your name on it.
Putting it out there,
but yeah, I think around that 1990 period, a few of the magazines dried up and disappeared and that sort of thing. And like I said, that sort of crew that grew up with the Thrasher and Transworld, and even some of the Australian magazines used to do little zine articles. They sort of And I think as you get older, you probably get a job and you've got access to a photocopier at work that you can sort of sneak in and use when there's no one around, and run off a bunch of copies of zines.
I did one myself, and it was in 1990.
Yes.
And we did it out of a friend of mine, Craig Ball.
Yep.
We did, what did we call it? Asphalt abrasions.
Yes.
And we did it out of South Sydney Youth Services.
Right.
And we printed everything on their copy machine.
Right, yes.
And Shane, who was like head of South Sydney Youth Services, Shane Brown. Yep. Great guy.
Yep.
He was like, yeah, you can do a zine. Yep. But then
2 weeks later, where's all the toner gone?
Yeah, exactly. Because we were like, well, nobody's given us a restriction on how many we can
That's
print,
right,
so
yeah.
let's go for our lives.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Well, I think in Canberra, like the guys in Canberra, I didn't do zines myself back then, and I think in the Canberra area it was maybe the late 80s,
Blake,
late 80s. But I think the benefit that a lot of the Canberra skaters had is their parents worked in the public service.
Yeah,
So
of course.
there was like an endless supply of paper and
Yes.
photocopiers and what have you.
Textiles
And and maybe I'm a little bit naive in that area, but it's only now when I'm reading things on the internet and reading some of the books that have been published, but I didn't pick up with the build up of World Industries how much friction there was between PAL and World
of course.
Industries and a lot of those other sorts of things. But some of the slightly younger guys, so Ed Foreman and Mick Donovan and those guys certainly understood or picked up the vibes on skate humour and the infighting. So, but I would supply photographs to a lot of the guys that were doing zines. So I got visibility of what they were producing. But Mick Donovan, who's a super talented skateboarder, great announcer and DJ, and a pretty good writer as well.
And hilarious human being.
Yeah, super funny guy. But he brought out a zine called Flower Hedge. So it was a play on the American magazine Power Edge magazine.
Yep.
And that's another photographer that I really looked up to, or skater, photographer, business person, was Sinel Gira.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the primary photographer for Power Edge magazine.
That's right.
And his imagery was just on another level.
Yeah.
Like with Grant Britton, Todd Swank and Spike Jones. But yeah. So I feel that because they were slightly younger, Mick Donovan and Stixie and those guys, but they understood immediately the humour and that whole skate culture of taking the piss out of each other, and would sort of play on Power Edge and Flower Hedge. And,
Yeah.
And it's something that's been lost in recent times.
Yeah, and there's a few other things where they would get ads for just mainstream products out of Woman's Weekly and what have you, and then change some of the
Corrupt
letters
them
and corrupt them and make them the titles for different parts of
Yes.
their zine.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
super creative people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, going back to what it's kind of like skateboarding, and I think, the two go hand in hand, the creative side and wanting to, like corrupt your environment, to just make it more suitable to how you're looking at the world, and the DIY scene. And I remember I wanted to go to, the first time I really wanted to go to Canberra, I don't know if they were your shots, but I think it was in Skating Life. There was a feature, and it was mostly the ditches in Canberra.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I remember there was an article in...
Yeah, so it was this DHA Banks, Ainsley Drain. So I think that was,
I think
I think
Blake,
a lot
Blake
of-
was in every photo.
yeah, well, I mean, if we don't mention it later on, but I think it can't be underestimated the influence that John Fox had on Australian skating.
Absolutely, yeah.
For the 80s into the 2000s.
Mm.
So Skating Life certainly set the benchmark for skate magazines, the quality of the publication, the articles, that he was able to look at what worked in American magazines. So like Transworld, so they had like Nurse Slam and
Yes.
things,
Yeah.
and
Scarfing
Transworld
material.
had scarfing material, and I think Fox did something else to do with dietary stuff within Skating Life.
Mm.
But then I'm not sure if people are aware, but he also had a talk show on Triple J
Yes,
So
I remember that.
he would ring in, and
Yep.
so he was really bringing skating into mainstream culture. And then maybe as skating life was starting to wind back a little bit just because of the economics, then he somehow got skating into the big day outs and what have you. So I'm sort of sad that we don't see as much of Fox now as we used to, and he was certainly the mainstay for maintaining Bondi Bowl, and then whether it was getting Bondi Bowl-orama up and going, and that really, I think that put Australian skating and vert skating in the world stage, because other than Protect Pool Party, Bondi Bowl-orama was the only other major skating event, vert skating event every year. So,
well, he's known. So Tony Hawk even recognises him as like a key person within skateboarding.
Worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. And all those guys from back then, because you couldn't help, if you came to Australia at some stage, you would deal with Fox because of skating time. Like, we want to do an interview, we want to do this
and
or that.
Big stage, the days out, and when the big day out came out, like was resurrected, and he got Tony Hawk and those other guys, Sandros Dios and what have you, skating. It was Fox that pulled all that together.
Yes.
And before I forget, so Fox, PED, Punk Element Design.
Yeah, of course.
And if anyone gets a chance to look at the Fox icon, now whether Fox came up with his Fox iconography or whether the Vado rat came out first.
Yeah, right.
But they're so similar.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but again, that Fox did Punk Element Design, man, in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yes, yeah, I've talked to a few people involved.
So I mean, that was around the time, even like DTS, Dogtown Skates, and so PED and just that iconography, that coming up with a really simple graphic that can be repeated.
Yep.
And is recognisable as being, oh man, that's a skate logo.
I think a lot of what Fox did within skateboarding was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, while it was on the decline, financially speaking, and less people were probably skating than ever, somehow he managed to convince the promoters of Big Day Out that having skateboarding there was a good idea. And I want to make it clear that this wasn't the most recent Big Day Out.
Yeah, this is the 92, 92. Yes, I went to the first Big Day Out, so I moved away from Canberra mid 92. So and again, thanks to Fox. And I must say, like, if I don't mention it later on, John Fox and Tony Hallam, Matt Davis and Danny Van are the four key individuals that helped me kickstart my skate photo journey. So Tony Hallam happened to come up to Curl Park one summer, or even one weekend, and I happened to be there, and I'd been taking photographs. So Matt Davis I skated with in Canberra, and then after school he moved to Sydney and worked at Chatswood Cycles with Danny Van, and then I joined the Air Force after school and joined the Air Force to be a photographer. So I did photography, got posted to out West Sydney, and knew Matt Davis was in Sydney, so I went and visited him at Chatswood Cycles, met Matt working there, and Danny Van, and Curl Park had just been built.
Oh, the vert ramp.
Yeah, the vert ramp. Yeah. So that was basically every skater in the Sydney area would go to Curl Park. It was the only place you could skate.
There was Five Dock, Curl Park and Alloa, but nobody used to go to Alloa from our area.
I went to Alloa.
Yeah.
That was my jam, because I don't like vert.
Yeah.
So-
We used to go. There was one also down at Gannon's Park, which was down Hurstville. Yeah.
I went
We
there
used to
too.
go to that one.
And maybe another unsung hero too, when we talk about like John, how significant John Fox was in skating in Australia is Tim Dorr.
Yeah.
So Tim Dorr, who designed Manly Skate City, which was before I was enabled to travel. So I was stuck in Canberra. There's no way I could get to Sydney. But then Tim Dorr designed and helped build Curl Park, and obviously Aussie Skateboards and Cockroach Wheels as well.
Yeah.
So I think Tim Dorr's another name that doesn't get mentioned very much with Australian skating.
There's a really good, I think it might even be the Aussie Skates website, which has got some great
He
archival
put some
photos
pages
on
up, and
there.
they've been there for a long time. And
Yeah.
they're a great read.
Yeah, I
If
haven't
you get a
read
chance to
that.
have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, highly recommend. Like the pages on there are awesome. Just the archival photography from places like Manly Skate City, Pimble Pools,
North Ride skate. park.
North Ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I love looking at stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's why I like your photography so much, because it just takes me every time I see one of your photos. It takes me back to then, because I guarantee you, every spot, when it came down to street and seeing photos of Blake Convey skating a street spot, I wanted to go skate that spot in Canberra. So every time, go hunt it out. And so every street spot that you took a photo of, I skated there.
Blake, both of the Convies, Byron and Blake, are just amazing skateboarders. But I obviously took a lot of photographs of both of them, but a lot of photos of Blake. And the only other person that I've had the same photographer skater relationship with is my really good mate Billy Harrison. But with both of them, somehow we've got this sixth sense, and we'll go to a spot and start skating and take photographs, and I'm taking photographs. I'm pretty hopeless at skating, but I would just I think I'd visualise what would Grant Britton or Spike Jones, how would they be photographing, or what trick would be significant enough, and I'll just say to Blake, do you reckon you could do such and such? And he'll just bloody do it, and I've got no idea, there's no way I could do the tricks on that terrain.
Yes.
But he'll just nail it within about 3 goes.
Yeah.
It's got to make it easier,
just
right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Billy Harrison's the same. Or Billy will go, I want to do a such and such off that hip, or want to do a big Staley here. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll damn well photograph it.
Yeah.
I'm just a skate fan. I just want to record it.
You just want to see them land it more to the point.
So
you know,
100%.
Did you back then, tee up with those guys beforehand and go, well, what are you up to today? I want to shoot a photo.
That's what I find amazing is I really love catching up with people that I travelled around with or did photos with, etc. Because, maybe I'm slightly simple, but I sort of forget a lot of what happens at the time. And when I catch up with people, we're looking at photographs and they go, I remember you, it was really cool, you let me and my sister come along in the car when the PAL team were in Canberra and what have you, and we did this, that, and the next thing. It was like, did I? I can't remember that. And I think part of it is I'm so focused on following where they're going and thinking about where they're going and how I'm going to photograph it, that I forget who's in the car with me.
Yeah.
But also, if I'm going on a skate adventure, or there's an opportunity like the PAL team, or when Tony Magnuson came to Australia a couple of times, I got along really well with T-Mag, and it'll be like, I've got a car and it's got myself and my camera gear. I've got a couple of free seats. I want to share the love with other people. So if there's some other skaters there that don't have wheels or their parents can't drive them around, man, I've got a few spare seats. Come and jump in with me, because it's going for the ride and sharing that experience, and then afterwards you can talk about it and just reliving it in discussions.
Yeah.
It just blows you away. But then I sort of get so focused on the photography, and then the great thing with, or the great thing and the terrible thing with old school photography is it costs you money to take the images. So each roll of film's like $10, $15. Then you've got to pay the equivalent again to get it processed. And unfortunately, there's been situations where there's some, and obviously I only send my better photos to the magazines, but I'm sending the one copy of that 35mm slide.
Putting a lot of trust out there.
And sometimes some of those images haven't come back. And going on a side tangent, so one example of that was I had a get together with my siblings a little while ago, siblings and extended family near Wollongong, and my niece just happened to, or they know me as Uncle Skateboard, and so even though they're adults now, so she decided to, leading up to the reunion, to search on the internet David Pang skateboarding, and she came across a blog by a Japanese skateboarder, and so the skateboarder published it in 2010.
Wow.
But I sent him a package with slides in 1990.
Wow.
Anyway, so he wrote this blog and goes, I was going through some paperwork the other day and came across these. Australian skateboarder, friend, photographer, sent these to me in the 1990s, and I've just unearthed them, so I've scanned up a few, and he posted them on his blog site. And so I happened to get hold of his contact tag, and I contacted him and said, look, I'm Dave Pang, I'm stoked to see these photographs. If you've still got the originals, it'd be great to get copies of them back and what have you. Anyway, so he contacted me. He goes, I'm Akiko, I think his name is, but you used to know me as Lester, and I grew up in Canberra and you used to take photographs of me, and I reached out to you and you sent me the photographs. So he sent me all the slides, all the prints, and a form letter with a list of all the photographs and etc.
So cool.
So I'm going to copy them up and put them in this little project that I'm running on. But it's just...
Had you forgotten about them?
Totally forgotten.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's amazing. So I've got this photo of Jeff Hartzell skating Curl Park and a few other heads, and just some great photographs. But it's just going back in this archive of, Dave Pang imagery and the list of photographs and who's doing what. It's fantastic.
How many? What percentage do you think of what you thought you went, that's a great shot, I'm going to submit it to whoever? Yeah. So what percentage do you think got printed at that stage, or was it just kind of like a walk in the park kind of situation?
So I would say in the 80s and 90s, I would say maybe 20% got used, and I would have got 95% of what I submitted back from the publishers. Yeah. And so there's 5% which where are they? And sometimes I flick through the magazines and just go, oh my God, I wish I had that.
What's the one?
The one
that's gone missing.
The one shot I know. The one shot I know that I'm missing, and it's no fault of anybody's, is a frontside boneless of John Tex Gibson from Texas, skating for Alva at the time, doing a frontside boneless on the Torquay ramp. So the first ramp riot. Yep. And Fox used it in the Skating Life poster book, so it's a full page, awesome. So at least I've got that image, but again, that was a revelation. Seeing Alan Losey skate the year or two before, and then seeing Bill Danforth, Craig Johnson, and Tex Gibson, and Lee Ralph, and even Gregor Rankin, Andrew Morrison, those guys skating at that first Torquay ramp right was just a revelation. But I'd seen photographs of Tex Gibson skating in the magazines and skating a caster deck, and it was just like, man, I know he's going to do layback airs, and I know he's going to do a frontside boneless, and I've got to make sure I'm in the right place.
Right.
And yeah, I got this frontside boneless of his, and it just, it was just like gold.
How many photographers were at something like that? Like now at an event, well, maybe not an event like Bolarama because it was very limited on the platforms. But it seemed to be back then, it was kind of like, if you had a camera in your hand, you could get up there. But how many genuine photographers do you think were on the decks in those days?
Again, like, man, I was in the right place at the right time, and fortuitously, the only thing that I was passionate, the only three things I was passionate about was skateboarding, music. What was it? There's something else, but they're the only things I was passionate about.
Wife?
Sorry?
Your wife?
Oh, well, I hadn't met my wife then, but certainly they were the only things that I was passionate about, and so I excelled in, and I was fortunate enough to go to a school that taught photography. So, and I did it extremely well in photography, and that was about the only thing I did well in. So that's what I was going to do as a career. And so I had access to really good photographic equipment. And because I skateboarded and was taking photographs, and I was certainly a much better photographer than I will ever be a skateboarder, but at least I knew what skateboarding was about and was passionate about it. So I would, again, like yourself, Damo, I would look at the magazine, so that photo of Tex Gibson doing a frontside boneless and go, okay, yeah, he's like, I knew how a frontside boneless was going to work and knew what trick he was going, or what manoeuvre he was going to do prior to doing a frontside boneless or a layback air or what have you, or even Danforth. I know Danforth is going to do a pogo, like 100%.
Yeah.
So I would sort of, I would find people, Omar Hassan, a lot of the skaters, you sort of knew how their runs were going to go, whereas someone like Grayson Fletcher, some of those other, Neil Blender, you've got no idea. Like, Gons.
Oh yeah, they're just making it.
They just, and you've just like, I've just got no idea. And when you're shooting film, each shot is worth almost a couple of dollars. It's like, dude, do I just rattle off a couple of frames? Whereas now, and I'm still doing that with digital. It's like, even though digital doesn't cost me anything, I'm still really quite conservative when I shoot. I've got to try and train myself into, man, the images are costing me nothing, and if I miss something, and especially with Grayson Fletcher, it's like, dude, I've just missed this killer shot. And who cares if I just get a 50-50 or a kick turn, but I might get some gold there. And Curran Caples is another skater that you just don't know what he's going to do next.
I especially think with Gons, just even with his video parts, you can just, like in video days, it just looks, nothing is planned. So I can't imagine that from your perspective going, well, this is costing money, and what's he going to do, and actually trying to set up so you're in the right spot and you're not taking an arse shot, like you're trying to get it, that must have been unreal. Who do you think was your favorite person to work with, as far as back in those days go? I know you touched on Blake, but did you have someone that was just like, I can't take a bad shot of this person? Or
was certainly Australian. Blake Convey, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can take a photo of Blake and it not look elegant and bio, but so easy. And then if you are a skater, you then look at what he's doing and just go, holy shit, that is like the most difficult trick in the most difficult terrain.
Yeah.
The other, and I'd certainly say outright, I'm a skate fan, and I still get fanned out by being able to photograph, getting close and personal to visiting pros, and the three, and I'll keep on going, but the three people that I don't think I've ever taken bad photos of, and they always look fantastic, is Jason Jesse, Christian Hosoi, and Steve Cab. And I still can't believe how fluidly smooth both Hosoi and Cab are. Like they're just like liquid silver when they skate, just so flowy. The other two people, the two most difficult people, back in the day, was Neil Blender and Jeff Phillips.
Yeah, right.
I think Jeff Phillips is another skater that you've got no idea what he's going to do next. And I didn't get to I only photographed him once, and that's one of the real anomalies. Is the tour that happened in the mid '70s with Rob Broskop, Jeff Phillips, Steve Stedham, Tony Hawk. I've got no idea where I was when that tour happened because I didn't photograph it. So there's that tour and the tour where Chris Miller and Christian Hosoi are skating on the ramp near the Opera House.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I've got no
that
idea.
That was sort of one of the first big demos that I went. So those other events were sort of just
before your era.
Yeah.
I can't remember the what order it was in, but I remember that Opera House demo and the Losi demo were within a year.
Yeah.
That's the way my memories.
There was a Bones Brigade one with Christian Hosoi as well in Martin Place. So that was probably 2-3 years after the Losi one. I didn't go to the Losi one. So
I went to the Losi one.
Losi one was amazing.
Everybody said that's the game changer for Australian skateboarding.
Absolutely.
And I mean, people may. I'm not sure what people's thoughts are on Hardcore and the Hill Brothers, but what they did for skateboarding in Australia is can't be underestimated.
No, it's undeniable. Absolutely.
I think credit to them that they started Globe and Globe's still going. I think it's great that there is that Australian product in competition in the world market.
But it's not just an Australian product now, it is a global product.
But it's sort of like flying the Aussie flag, like it's sort of, competing with the other big names around the world. But when Losi came out, and I find it really interesting that was before the magazines came out. And you sort of asked me, Damo, like how did we tee up doing the photography? Did we talk about it beforehand? But it still got me beat how ourselves as skateboarders, without mobile phones and even landlines, most people had a landline phone, but I mean, even keeping track of everyone's phone number, but how you worked out, we're going to meet at such and such a skate area at such and such a time on whatever day. How we did that, and I mean,
I actually don't remember how it happened.
The number of times nowadays you get blown away by people not turning up.
It was a funny story. I was talking to Adrian Jones about it, and there was a little crew that worked at Skateboard World in Burwood, and they basically had like a corkboard, and people would post up photos, and that was basically your social media. That was like Facebook back in the day.
It's like a community notice board.
Corkboard at the skate shop was how everybody sort of worked out where they were going to be and what spots.
A couple of years after that Losi demo, so there was obviously Curl Park, and then a couple of years later Monavale was built, but you also had maybe I've got the timing slightly wrong, but then you had Andrew Hulley's ramp in his backyard. in Rydalmere, I think it
That's
was,
right,
or
yeah.
somewhere.
Yep.
But Mitch Newell's ramp in Mitch's backyard, Dave Clancy had a ramp in his backyard.
Yep.
Now, how we knew what we were going to be skating on any day of the weekend, I've got no idea. But everyone seemed to turn up to the right place at the right time on the right day.
Yeah.
And you'd have these like killer sessions.
Well, for me, it was easy because I was always way more into street skating than I was into vert. It just seemed more accessible to me anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really easy. My friend lived like a block over from me, so I just go to his house. And either he was there or he wasn't. If he wasn't there, I guess I'm skating by myself that day. Or if it was Sunday, I'd just go to Martin Place.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just catch the train to Martin Place, the old pit there, and there'd be, probably a dozen people throughout the day that you could hook up with and go off to another spot. And so that was kind of like understood to be the meeting spot if you were going to go skate the city that day. So it was really easy for me sort of teeing that up. And then I think maybe I'd call someone if there was something bigger on, like a demo or something like that. We're trying to organise who's going to drive and
catch the ferry.
Canberra was, I think Canberra was fairly straightforward because Woden Skate Park, which was Woden Skate Park after the commercial park closed, and Fred from Surf Scene in Canberra built a vert ramp on the concrete area where the quarter pipe used to be.
Okay.
And then the bowl was still there. The bowl was like really chunky and gnarly, but sort of skatable. And then eventually a mini ramp was built.
I skated that mini ramp.
Oh, behind the vert ramp, and then it was moved into the club room before the skaters totally annihilated.
When I skated,
the
it was undercover in that.
Yeah. Well, would you believe the skaters pulled that whole club room down? Like they pulled it apart, and it's just like, so you had an undercover skate facility, and
it was just more fun to throw.
Yeah, it's more fun to pull the damn place apart.
Yeah.
But so I think we would all meet at Woden, and there was a couple of us. So I was a bit older than Blake and Byron, and there was a couple of other guys that had licenses and wheels. So you'd meet at Woden, skate there for a while, and go, let's go. And Arundel was built there, and D.H.A. Banks was there.
The only time I saw that Woden
Canberra half pipe.
We went to Canberra on a skate shoot. There was 3 or 4 of us from my area, and then it was pouring all weekend. So we went out to Woden, and we were like, I can't skate here, but we ended up going to Arundel and skating that in the rain. And it was
maybe we were there at the same time because I did a trip and I think I was 15, and so it would have been 1990.
that was probably around the time
and the mini ramp was undercover at Woden. I think it had holes in half of it or something like that. So it was hard to skate anyway. But maybe I'm getting mixed up from head injuries, but I'm pretty sure that Belco, the first Belco, had
Belco
just opened. Like it was. Maybe it was even that was the reason
even
we went
half built.
Yeah.
So
when we went, Belco wasn't built, so it must have just been.
Belco was started early, like maybe late '89, but certainly 1990 into 1991.
Yeah, I remember rocking up there, and we parked in front of. Remember the Pizza Hut that was there?
At Woden.
At Belco.
Wow.
So there was a Pizza Hut.
Yes, yeah.
And we rocked up there, and I think
so. Oleon's skate shop would have been there.
Yeah.
In that car park as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we rocked up there, and I was like, I'd never seen anything like it. Like seeing Belcon, and it had everything. That was the thing. It had that donut bowl, it had the vert ramp, it had the bowl still there.
Yeah.
the little snake run down to the crater, the kicker next to the quarter pipe that you could transfer. It had the first flat bar I'd ever seen, which was that like double coping coming up from the ground, and then it had a mini ramp.
Yeah.
And I was like,
look, I'm hopeful that Canberra starts to move with the times and it starts building skate parks that are on par, if not leading Australia again.
So
because
really
back then
through the 90s, Canberra was sort of the place to go.
Yeah. Well, even Arundel Banks. Like what other council in Australia would build a facility that's not a skate park but skatable?
Yes.
Like,
so that was way ahead of its time.
There was a couple of spots in Sydney, like Manly Corso was one of them, but they did everything to try and stop it.
Well, that's
same kind of banks, and then the craters at King's Cross, which was like 3 fountains.
There was a place at North Ryde that was just near where the old skate park was, and it was a factory that had all these beautiful transition brick banks.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's sort of.
That'd be long gone now.
Oh yeah.
No, but I definitely remember. For me, and again going back to the magazines, I'd see Canberra as the mecca of Australian skateboarding. It just seemed to have, from the photos that were in there, and of course Canberra photo David Pang, and I'd be like, what this. It's a tiny little space. It's got the best skate park I've ever seen. It's got like bank spots, like little transition spots, like Arundel. It's got ditches, and it seemed to me, like from looking at that, it's like there's drainage ditches. Like it seemed like they were everywhere. Like that's how you guys got around town.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
sort of again like I can really relate when if people have got the chance to read Sean Cliver's book Disposable, and he talks about living in backwater hick town in America somewhere, and being into skating, and like our experiences, like being a bit of an outcast and listening to non-standard music, and then he puts in an application for the do you want to work for a skateboard company and be an artist and what have you. So he submits the thing and he gets the phone call, we're going to fly you out to Santa Barbara and have an interview for an artist. And he has this visualization like, I'm going to hang out with the Bones Brigade and hit all these different spots and everything. And sort of not realising that the magazines cover bloody hectares and hectares of space. And he's sort of thinking from his small backwater country town, that it's all within a walk of each other.
I remember the first time I went to California on a skate trip.
And you just think,
I went to the
this
place,
spot
and
and
they're
that
like,
spot.
there's this ramp. It's just like this half pipe, and I knew the half pipe because Jim Gray had an ad, had a refrigerator doing a fakie up. And I'm like, this thing's out in the middle of nowhere. It's like in the middle of some canyon somewhere. And I'm like, it's not central to anything.
Well, it's kind of like
that sort of happens.
I think Blake will be stoked to hear, Blake and the other Canberra skaters, that their skating and being fortuitous to take the images made Canberra a go-to spot.
Absolutely.
Because and really a lot of that's credit to the skaters, and that's what I always say is like I'm thrilled and I'm stoked that people like my photography. But if the guy, and I shouldn't say just the guys, because there's some ripping skaters of all genders and persuasions, but if people aren't skating to such a high standard, then I can't photograph it. And I'm just consider myself so lucky that I'm able to photograph them. But I both look at, I want to document it, but I also want to make it as spectacular as possible.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's great. And the other thing that I find is, and I said I really still get starstruck and I fan out over the people that I idolise, and I've idolised for most of my life in skateboarding, but I actually get more of a thrill if a publisher publishes an unknown person
Yes.
in the public domain, and ideally in a magazine, because then it's in hard copy forever and a day.
Yeah.
But everyone's seen photos of Jesse and Hassoy and Cab, and I still love taking photographs of them. But for someone who's unknown to get published is just so good. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if it's a spectacular photo, people are going, who the fuck's this? Like, what is this dude doing? And it's a bit like that when you hear Mike Vallely talking about when Lance and Neil Blender went to Virginia Beach, and Mike's thinking he's emulating what they're doing in California, and Lance and Neil are just freaking out over ho-hos and stuff because they've never seen them before. And that's what I love, is like, if I photograph someone doing something that we think is like, oh, they're doing a trick, and everyone else is just going, what the hell?
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing I really loved about growing up in that era of magazines, is because not everything... Cause skateboarding was growing faster than the media was.
Documentation.
For it. So you're dependent on magazines, because by the time the video hit, that's a year ago already. By the time we got it over here, so those publications, those magazines, you'd see one shot and you'd be looking at it upside down, trying to figure out how did he get into that position, and where is he going. So there was so much imagination in it, and having to figure stuff out. And sometimes I really think that led to the invention of tricks. Because you get it wrong, and then
I remember when the two tricks that when they came out was chink chinks and blunts.
Oh, right, yes.
And so you'd sort of hear like, such and such is trying a chink chink or a blunt, and you're just going, so what? You go up and you stall on your wheels with the tail or the nose against the transition and the coping, and then you ollie it back in and go fakie.
Yes.
And then with chink chinks, you go up fakie, and you bump off the coping,
rotate
or pivot on your front truck, and either go back fakie or go back regular.
Yeah.
And just going, what the fuck?
No,
who could even think of doing that?
It's sublime, and the communication of it as well. It's like you see one photo of it, unless it was a sequence shot, and that helped a little, but still, you'd still be scratching your head over stuff like that.
I always remember the John Lucero trick tip, how to do frontside slappies on a curb, and it would be like trying to. No.
Yeah. One of my favourite ones was Nardis's no comply trick tip, and he just Nardis just being hilarious. Put in the description, it was something about like you gotta repeat Afghanistan banana stand like 3 times or something like that was one of the steps. But all those, that media back then.
But I mean, that's what's so great is like what other individuals, and whether you call them athletes or celebrities, would just take the piss out of themselves and out of everybody else in like a magazine. Like, could you imagine like a gridiron footballer or soccer player? Afghanistan. Banana peel.
It's the ridiculousness of it. I think it also comes from, at some stage you realise that you're becoming an adult, or you are an adult, and you're playing with a child's toy. That's what you're doing. And for me anyway, I used to look at the skate shop and go, it's a toy store.
Yeah.
That's what they sell toys.
I think that's cool as well. And again, I I just think it's so cool that I'm a grandfather, but I still ride around on a silly wooden toy with wheels. And the other thing, the most ridiculous thing is, I still get excited about stickers. Now, I'm almost 60 years old, and I still
we were in the skate shop yesterday. I've been in the industry forever. I've had access to more stickers than, but I still go in. There's a bowl of stuff. I'm going through it.
Yeah,
get out of it. What are you doing?
I think that's brilliant. Like that's. I think and they use that term so often. You don't stop skateboarding because you get old. You get old because you stop skateboarding.
Yeah.
And I think. I really hope I never lose that hunger and that excitement of either going, like when you smell grip tape or a brand new set of wheels or stickers. And I love what Nabs with Skeleton Key, he goes, and he was handing out some stickers to Cons and myself and a few other people. He goes, smell it, like these are the proper vinyl stickers, like you smell it. And he's going, look, I deliberately wanted to make these the OG stickers, and they've got that old school smell, and
some of that smell is released, and you wouldn't know it unless you experience these stickers. But when you peel the back off it, the smell gets stronger.
And that's just so cool. If we can keep doing that, and if we can share that with maybe some of the new up and comers that don't have that experience, but say this is what it's about, or no, this is not what it's about, but this is what it was about for us.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really love, it sort of scares me a little bit, but I love it, is leading up to like a big event, be it Bolarama or what have you, or if I'm going to skate a skate park that I haven't been to before, so the North Ryde Park, and I sort of heard about it, like it's a really big kidney pool, and I'm driving there and I start to get the butterflies in my tummy and start to get tingling and just going, fuck, am I going to man up and am I going to be able to skate this, or fuck, if I bail, is it going to hurt or what have you? But it's such a good feeling in that, like, I know I'm alive, and
absolutely.
And even leading up, like, if I'm not going to skate, but I'm going to take photographs, it's like, fuck, am I going to get some really killer shots, or what's it going to be like? And it's just it's an experience that hopefully you can talk to people about and share, but it's something that you experience, and I hope I never lose those sensations.
Well, it's definitely, for me anyway, it's definitely a way of looking at the world, and those little things, like you're saying, getting excited about stickers and stuff like that. I know if I'm in a skate shop and I see that under the shrink wrap there's a sticker there, I'm drawn towards that board before the one that doesn't have a sticker there, and like it's just like one of those little things that it just makes such a difference. And I remember being a kid and getting a new board and just studying every inch of that. Like having an interest in art helped, but studying every inch of the graphics and then like with the Caballero, the top of the dragon coming out of the box, the ones with the bats as the background print,
with the bone in the
and then realizing the negative of that, the bat prints were bones,
Well, what I loved is, I think most people love the Rainbow Rodriguez graphics of the sword and skull, but then when Powell came out with the cab dragon, and it was sitting on the bearing, and it was just like, fuck, that is so cool, like, because cabs...
Wasn't the first one came out without the bearing?
No, the first one was with the bearing, and then they just got rid of the bearing, but it was just like, that's so cool, because Cab's a bit younger, and he's like the up-and-comer, and it's just like, okay, that puts into perspective how little the dragon is relative to it, and it's got that skate relatedness in it, and
but I always associated that. I was like, oh, they took the top PAL and they turned it this way, so it's not looking. The dragon isn't going to the left anymore, like the head of the dragon. They've just shifted it, so it's now facing you, kind of thing. I was like, oh, yeah. But those graphic, for me, it was Tommy Guerrero's graphic, the sword and the flames, and that I think I had 3 of those boards, which was a lot to have of those boards back then, because a board would last like a year.
And you could still get the same board a year later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the same graphic, the same shape, same everything. It might have had bone art in it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So like, so you must have an archive as far as of your own stuff, as well as other people that you enjoy their work, as far as magazines and stuff you've collected.
Yeah, I've got most of the magazines from the 80s into the early 90s, and I pretty much haven't got rid of any, even a lot of the outtakes of films. I've got a storage container with the outtakes. And I'm slowly scanning them up, and A.H.A and Aaron Brown will confirm that I've been talking about ages about doing a book, but that's I've sort of set myself a timeline to get a coffee table book together, and really I want to use that as a stepping stone and a motivation. That my ultimate goal is to be an editor of hopefully the definitive history of Australian skateboarding. So I want to do it online, hopefully use my photographs as a stepping stone and a catalyst for people to start putting on an online medium their recollections of demos, people they skated with, and then we have a non-partisan, if that's the right word, but an independent point of view of or everyone's point of view on this is who were the up-and-coming skaters. This was the skate shop to go to. Yeah. These were the best places to go skating. This was the best demo.
And then that builds community in my imagination. Because
but I'd hate to see the history of Australian skateboarding get lost because we're all getting older, so we're going to move on sometime down the track. But I think it's so diverse. Like you said, Damo, where there's so many creatives in skateboarding. We look at the terrain differently, and it's not recorded because we're pretty slack in what we do. We just live for the moment most of the time. Yeah. So I'd really like it to be recorded and not be biased as to the different companies that existed in different parts of Australia. Sure. And generally speaking, history's written by the conquerors. Mm-hmm. And there's some very influential individuals and companies that have existed that don't exist anymore, and I'd hate for those to disappear. So Koala being one, Righteous Skateboards, Burford Blanks, Bonza, Aussie Skates, all these great companies, even like Speed Wheels, and I'm sure there's even the Skate Wing and what have you. So just to get that recorded and put there for posterity's sake. But I would love if I can do that or be involved in that, is the online version being able to be printed as a publication of some description. Yeah. Yeah, but
I was going to say, with having an archive that great and, doing a coffee table book, where do you start? Because, let's assume you have, 100 double-sided pages. I don't know how thick's a coffee table book.
I've got no idea. It can be big or small,
yeah. So
it just depends how you want to refine it and how much you want to cover. And so the other thing too is you've got to sort of do it in a way that's palatable to the person that's reading. You don't want to make it too long that you're just going to sit there forever. And So I've corralled together a
a core group of confidants that I'm sending images to, and I'm writing some stories, and also putting as much technical, not as much, but some technical detail. So the camera I used, the film stock if it was filmed back in the day, the exposures and those sorts of things. And I really like the people that I photographed, be it the skaters, and I'm putting, my idea would be to have lifestyle photographs as well as skating images in there as well. So skating lifestyle photos. But I think it would be nice to have the subjects in the photograph have a written passage on their views or their recollections of that moment in time.
That'd be great.
But I've got the confidence to look at the images and what I've written and give me some feedback if they think I'm heading in the right direction. But and credit to A.H.A and Aaron Brown, they've sort of given me a kick in the backside and said, look, you've got to get in and do it. And Aaron Brown's produced 2 books already, one on skating and one non-skating. But I mean, he's bitten the bullet and actually done it, whereas I've spoken about it for years and years and never done it. But I'd like to do it while there's people still interested in it, and use it as a catalyst to do that full history of Australian skateboarding.
That'd be fantastic. I think that would be so well received. And as far as the online, what you were talking about, would be so well received and give a lot of people a voice as well, who grew up in smaller communities of skateboarding. Maybe they were a little bit out of the capital cities, maybe maybe they just never ventured outside their neighbourhood.
But I think it's really important too, is like if there are the smaller areas and again with the power of the internet and social media, that they have a voice, but also to give credit to, like, if it wasn't for such and such a shop, or even like the local news agency owner got a couple of skateboards in, or even got the magazines in. So, we still had to right away and buy our skateboards on, like, through the mail order, but at least we got the magazines in and we knew what was going on, etc. Or, if it wasn't for Chad Ford with Speed Wheels, or if it wasn't for Fox with Skating Life, we wouldn't have known what was going on in skateboarding at the time. So,
and we would have known what was going on in the States, but the local scene would have been largely overlooked by everybody. And I don't think, because that was also a way of communicating when the demos were on, when people were touring and stuff like
music,
that.
like again,
exactly.
if it wasn't for Transworld, like with their they introduced me to like the British band 999, Circle Jerks, even knowing the names of the bands. And again, like Fox and Trevor King and those guys, Dave Mock, putting in some of the music, Australian music that wasn't mainstream. I'd have no idea.
No, absolutely not. You'd be buying what was most appealing from the top 40. Like going, this is kind of okay.
So the thing was back to, sort of people copying tapes and all that sort of thing. And then I think one of the first skateboard videos I ever saw was a video called Summer Sessions, which is by Shaw Group International. And that had TSOL, Change Today was the soundtrack.
They're touring this year too. TSOL.
But, that was sort of, we knew a little bit, we knew about Nick Cave, we knew about Devo and that sort of thing, but we didn't really gel. But once, oh my God, this stuff's amazing.
But
that was sort of our entry,
even then, like, because you guys grew up in Sydney, so you had Double J and Triple J. But even like Canberra, we only had like 3 or 4 radio stations to listen to, and they were all like, Sunshine FM and just like your mainstream stuff. And there was none of this like streaming music through the internet.
Well, the internet, there was no internet.
There was no internet. So you really, it depended on what music your mates had and getting those tapes copied.
I remember it was actually a girl from Canberra made me a mixtape and gave it to me, and there was songs on there that I'd never heard, and she listed all the artists.
Yeah.
So it made me go into what I think it went into Red Eye Records after she made me this mixtape, and went into Red Eye Records and had my list of artists, because there was only one track from each of these artists on there. So going through and going, oh, that's their record, that's their album, you know, like, and putting me onto a lot of bands just from that one mixtape. But and again, Canberra's influence on,
Well, Canberra had a really good record shop. It was called Impact Records, and I think there was one or two record shops in Sydney that were the same. Yeah. But you would go, like, they Impact imported records as well.
Yes.
So you knew, like, you go and see the bands, or like that you knew, or the label that the band recorded on. Yes. But they would also write little narratives with lesser known bands. They go, oh, if you like Dead Kennedys, or if you like Joy Division, you might like this. This is a little bit the same.
We had Waterfront and Phantom with the
two
shops. Yeah, because Waterfront used to always have these awesome little drawn in text stuff.
JB Hi-Fi try and do that. They have their team members' picks.
Yes. I've seen that a couple of times.
I think that's somebody at JB Hi-Fi used to work at one, or used to at the very least go into one of those record stores that had that sort of on the sleeve communication going on and recommendations.
But I mean, again, not harping like back in the day. But I mean, certainly for myself, and when I was courting my now wife, so she lived in Canberra and I lived out at Richmond in West Sydney. So we would alternate travelling one way to catch up with each other and spend the weekend, and then travel back to our respective areas. So during the week, while working, I would do mixtapes, so we had music to listen to. Yep. But I'm just thinking of the number of hours I would have spent recording and then writing every band name and the track. But it was a really good way of, like, we'd almost connect even though we weren't together, because then again, like pre-mobile phone and even like pay phones, like paying like bloody copious quantities of money to talk to each other interstate. Yes. Yeah. But she would connect with me and she'd go, oh, like, I really love that tape you just did, and I like side A more than side B, and this, that, and the next thing. And it was just a really cool way, and it'd be like, it was like, okay, well, I won't put too much dreamy sort of music on because she's driving, so I don't want her to fall asleep, and I know she doesn't really like the really hardcore, ragey punk music, but it's more like this. So it's really, a way almost curating a music track for her to go between Canberra and Sydney. But it's really nice to get that.
Which shows you care, because you're not making a tape for you to listen to. You're making it on what you think that person, that level of consideration. Going, I think they'll like that. Not just because, well, I like it. Why don't you like it?
But again, I would now, if I hear a tune that used to get played a lot at skate sessions, it takes me back, to even like the late 70s or mid 80s. It's just like, oh, I can remember like that session, or and some of the characters.
I remember when I first started working at Monster Skate Park, they had these kick-ass stereo, brand new mega amplifiers, and that was my whole thing, was just to sort of make music that had all the songs from the skate soundtracks. And you get all these older dads coming and go, oh, I remember, was this the one that was in?
There's a few people who have done it on Spotify.
Yes.
Like skipping right into the future, but they've done so from like the skate videos. Yep. So you can find, someone's made a playlist in order of like the Future Primitive soundtrack,
right?
Or like the Animal Chin soundtrack, or Wheels of Fire.
Wow.
Well, I listened to so just recently, public radio station in Brisbane did an interview with Andrew Mackenzie, who owned Koala Skateboards, and he's a Brisbane skate icon, but also music icon for alternative music. And so the lady that was interviewing her was talking about, and Andrew was talking but also playing some of his favourite tunes, and she made the comment that she was playing some music, and her son was like singing along to it. And she goes, "How do you know this?" He goes, "Oh, this is on the Tony Hawk soundtrack to the Tony Hawk video game."
Yeah.
And they were talking about how influential those soundtracks are to even the newer culture. And even though the bands may not have got great royalties out of having their songs on the Tony Hawk game,
It was exposure.
the exposure and then the sales and popularity of that band due to that. So, I mean, again, everyone knows who Tony Hawk is, but I think his influence with modern society is just phenomenal.
I think skateboarding's influence on throughout the decades that I've been skating, I couldn't help but see what we were into as skaters, whether it be music, fashion, haircuts, that being reflected, and the rest of society kind of catching up with it like 6 months later or something like that, and a lot of the time we'd already moved on. But
I was fortunate after my career in the Defence Force. I somehow moved sideways, working in the art sector, so worked in the National Gallery, and seeing what were the trends in art in national and state institutions, and then seeing what skateboarders were producing of their own volition art-wise was quite often ahead of what the mainstream art movement was doing. So be it fashion, music,
exactly,
even potentially architecture, and the influence. I think skateboarders are having some influence on and I think they call it hardscaping.
Yes.
And art, like
we've got to get a few more sleeper agents into these architectural.
100%,
yeah, absolutely. It looked like I think as far as architecture goes, I definitely noticed a rapid decline or dead stop to people putting embankments or any kind of transition into the foyers of buildings or the plazas, It was like, no, let's just go hard edges.
Yeah, I remember skating the High Court building, sort of just up the top of Martin Place there.
Oh, yeah.
In the 80s. And the security guards used to come down with like full SLR cameras with flashes, and they'd be taking photos of us, and because we're skating these brick banks out the front. And
well, even in skating life, like back in the day, that I think Dave Mock took photographs of some of the Sydney skaters skating the Opera House, so that there's like
banks
banks up on
that
would be unheard of now. I would assume that
they're still there, those banks.
Yeah, but I don't think you'd get very close to skating them now.
CCTV.
But the other area as well, like I think skateboarders were way ahead as far as body art goes too, like tattoos,
Absolutely.
Well, they were sort of the first people I always remember, outside of bikies and sailors having tattoos.
The Godoys, Jason Jesse were certainly.
Maybe the sort of punk rock scene and that sort of thing.
Sailors, punk rockers, skaters.
Yep.
Bikies.
Now you ask those folks with the sleeve to make you a latte.
Yeah, that's it. There's grandmothers getting tattoos now. It's incredible. But I definitely think like a lot of these industries have at the very least borrowed from skateboarding. Like you were saying about architecturally, I mean, you look at like the skateboard course, like in the Olympics or at a major event, like whether it be Dew Tour, Street League, whatever. That is so pleasant to look at. Like your eyes are just like, oh, it just makes me happy to look at it, you know? Whether it's symmetry or whether it's, you know, just the curves. Yeah, I definitely think that influence needs to go into architecture again, especially in the foyers of buildings, or maybe just their car parks.
Yes.
But
people need to pay more attention what Audi do in their showrooms. I think they've got a good direction there.
Exactly. But I think I don't know. I'm just appreciative of falling into skateboarding, it coming into my life, and yeah, just everything it's brought along the way, which has led to sitting here with you guys chatting about skateboarding. Yeah, exactly.
Well, skateboarding in life, because I don't really differentiate between, like, I don't put skateboarding isolated to who I am as a person and my life. And I think you said it right at the beginning that it's synonymous. Like, you fell into it and it's just become part of who you are. And I don't think I'd get into that debate. You know, is skateboarding a sport or is it a lifestyle? It's just part of the fabric of.
I've tried to define it, even from my own point of view, what I think of skateboarding, and it for me is, any way I try and put it, it doesn't come out right. It doesn't express how I actually feel, because I don't think there's words to sort of describe it. Because it is just it's in my DNA now. It's what I do. It's not what I do. It's what I am. It's such a part of me that I think culturally, like, a lot of generations could have benefited from more involvement in skateboarding. If it was bigger, you know, like, for me it was finding, first of all, community and an activity that I could do in a group of people, by myself, day, night. Like, it's raining, no problem. There's a undercover car park down the road. Like, and wherever you got a hard surface on the ground, you can do it there. Which, I don't know. I can't think of anything like it. I don't know if you guys can. People playing handball.
Maybe.
Yeah, but I now and again I come across people like, oh look, you know, I've only just started skateboarding, or look, you know, it's okay if I can, you know, if I come along and skate, but I don't skate very well. I skate, dude. I don't care whether you've only just stood on a board. If you're on a board and just balancing, or you're ripping like Bucky or Steve Cab. But the mere fact that you're doing it and enjoying it and giving it a go, that's better than someone talking about wanting to do it or sitting on the couch watching it. And there's nothing wrong in watching it, but that you want to do it, like, strength to you, and you're part of the brotherhood.
The beginning of anything, you know, it's sort of the golden three: get up, dress up, show up. As long as you're doing it. So you're part of it. So.
And you know, and I think that's the great thing with skating as well, is most people will give props, and if someone's like starts faking on the bottom and does their first kick turn, everyone's like giving high fives and going, you're ripping. Or if you're like blasting, like just doing insane tricks that no one's ever heard of before, obviously you're getting props, but it's all relative. And I think most people and most skaters just go, you're giving it a go and you're pushing yourself.
Well, it's the same level of enthusiasm, right? Because if you're the guy doing huge airs, ollieing down huge stair sets, like flip in, flip out on rails, you've still been that kid that's, you know, just ollied off or up a gutter like for the first time, or done a kick turn at the bottom 30 centimeters of the transition on the vert ramp. Like you've been there, so you're enthusiastic because A, you've been there, and B, you're stoked on their stoke, right? Because that person, that's the happiest that person's going to be all week. Like, and it'll carry on, you know?
Yeah.
It'll pass on too.
Yeah. And again, that's what I love about skating with, if you're in your local skating environment and you have an out-of-towner, and then they see your skate park, your skate terrain with a different set of eyes, and you see their lines and you just go, holy shit, I've never thought of approaching it that way.
Yes.
Or how the hell did they do that?
Yes.
I've never done that before.
Dorfus was the master of,
and that's what I just love about it. And I've got a similar approach to, like I look at other people's images, and especially if there's other photographers at the same time or same event that I'm at, and they've captured images of skaters differently to myself, I do get envious of it, but admire and just go, oh man, I've got to look at it doing it that way. And I noticed with the last Belco Bowl Jam, one of the photographers was using a slightly more spherical fisheye lens, and it's sort of given me the impetus to look at what other lenses are available for my camera, because it's just, oh wow, that's another way of recording it and photographing it, and it's not better, but it is better in a different way, or it's a different way of looking at it. And maybe I'm getting a bit stale in using the same lens. And man, I'd look at other people's images in admiration and some level of jealousy and go, man, I want to emulate them. And again, same with Dave, back in the day, Dave Mock and Scott Needham and Dave Walsh, and just like, you know, you'd wait and get the film back and get stoked if you've got some good images. But then you look at what your colleagues have done and just get, you know, admire what they're doing.
Well, I think that's probably the main thing that skateboarding gives to people, is when you're out there and you're influenced by somebody and you're like, I'm going to give it a go. You know, there's that DIY element where you've sort of learned off somebody else, or you've seen the way somebody else does it that's different to the way you do it. That inspires you, you know. That's the secret for you to start that journey. So.
I think, and you know, because it's free flowing, everybody's puts their little twist on it,
and there are no rules.
Exactly.
And the interesting thing is, like when you're having a skate session with somebody, and they approach the terrain differently, or they do a trick, and you go, how the hell do they do that? And one person can do a trick just so easily, and then you try it and it's just impossible. And they're going, but how'd you do that? Like, or, you know, some people are like just the masters of switch or fakie. Yes. And then other people like just, I'm not going backwards, not at all. Front side versus back side, or you know, some people are like the lip trick kings, and other people are like just going bio and getting heaps of air. It's just, that's what I love about it too. Like, it's so indiscriminate, it's non-discriminatory. It's just whatever floats your boat. And
if you're enjoying it, that's all that counts. Yeah. And everybody feeds off other people's enjoyment of it, and just passion for it. And you know, like that kid down there just made his first kickflip, and you know, it's like I learnt them 30 years ago, but I'm still stoked as that kid is. Such a.
I mean, similarly again, like sometimes you jump on someone else's board and you just go, oh dude, I've got to set up my board like that. Or you step on someone else's board and you just go, that's horrible. How the hell can you skate? How can you skate like that? Like I jump on Billy Harrison's board and it's like so damn tight. It's like, how do you even get around a corner on that thing? Like I've just got a tic-tac around the corner. I can't, there's no way I can carve on that. And then you jump on someone else's board and you go, like, dude, I'm going to get death wobbles just dropping down like a 3 foot tranny, because you know it's like Day One Songs board. There's no bushings in the damn truck, and you just look at like, dude, how does Day One song like?
But I think
Ollie, like
that's where it comes to whatever works for you.
Yeah,
right?
but that's what's so cool.
It's all fine.
Yes.
It's all perfectly acceptable.
100%.
You know, you want to put four trucks on a skateboard?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, well,
go for it.
Man.
It doesn't happen in cars and that sort of thing. You don't see people will
Formula
walk up
One.
and go,
Could
you
you
know, I'm going
imagine
to get
like-
rid of the steering wheel and just put a pair of vice grips on and that's how I'm going to steer.
Yeah, that's it.
But that's what's so cool too. Is like if you look at like Formula One, where it's so governed and so
Refined,
regimented,
yes,
and like the tolerances are
Yep.
so specific. And skateboarding, it's like, dude, like just turn up with a plank of wood and
Yep.
Yeah.
roll it, like cut a pair of roller skates in half, and if you're ripping, you're ripping.
Yeah.
And if you've got like a high-tech NASA designed carbon fibre bloody titanium skyship
Yep.
and you're ripping, well, fucking good on you.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't matter. It's so accepting as a community, as an activity, as whatever, however you want to define it. It is definitely, I think, just the best thing anybody can get involved with in their lifetime. Just for all the reasons we've mentioned over the last however long it's been. But yeah, so what's ahead for Dave Pang? We touched on the
Do the book.
Yeah.
Still take photos. There's a few things in the pipeline, so you can update at Damo as the podcast evolves.
I definitely
But
will.
there's always something happening. In the Pang domain.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you, A.H.A?
I don't know. I'm just going to try and age gracefully.
Yeah. There's that.
Keep-
isn't
try and
there?
keep-
Well, if you're still skateboarding, you're going to be aging gracefully.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know
exactly.
about that.
If you're feeling self-conscious, we can do a filter.
Right.
Yeah.
Cat face.
Or if you give me a photo of you younger,
Right.
I can just paste it over the top for the entire thing.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much for the chat, and
It's
all
been
the best
awesome. It's
in the
been
future.
good. Yeah.
And sure, we'll have a roll together really soon.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.